Chapter 1, the second part, Anglo-Saxon religion. So, by looking at religion, can we find evidence of it being a golden age? First of all, we have to understand how different the church was hundreds of years ago. It was a real mixture in Anglo-Saxon England of the Catholic Church, like everyone else was in Europe, but it did have a little bit of a legacy of kind of like the Celtic Church in terms of kind of like the influence of Ireland, and as it mentions there, it even has a little bit of kind of like influence of paganism earlier on. Now, the Anglo-Saxon Church in England was a little bit unique, which means actually that's probably the strongest way of not saying that it was part of a golden age, because surely it should have been the same as everywhere else in Europe. So for one, it actually chose not to have its Bible in Latin, which is what it should have been in, but instead it had it in Old English. As it says at the bottom, that's a sign of independence, but does that make it to be part of a golden age or not? Because it then meant that they weren't the same as the Pope, and the Pope is a pretty powerful figure. So, religion of the people. Our picture of our stone cross. You know, we would say, where do people worship? We would expect to see a church, but actually their churches, they did have them. I'm not saying they didn't have them, but they certainly weren't the churches that we kind of like see today. The legacy of those churches very much the Norman churches, the ones that come in chapter 5. But they did have a lot of these stone crosses, so people worshipped around the stone cross. But again, is that an example of golden age? I don't think so, really. The behaviour of the church, the behaviour of the people, lots of problems with binge drinking, overeating, indulging in sex. Again, morally, were they in a golden age? Probably not. Touch the Lord of the Rings, enough said. Right, then we look at a couple of characters. So, Saint Dunstan, need one say more, Saint Dunstan. He is the big example of someone that was really, really positive within the church. Look, there's some loads of great facts there in terms of what he did. Under him, it was in a golden age, definitely. He led the church morally. However, he's not around forever. Right? He did die in 988. The king himself, very, very religious. Right? He didn't get the name Edward the Confessor for nothing. Right? He did obviously want to do kind of like his best. He definitely lived his life in a moral way, hence why perhaps the reason he didn't have children. However, he was influenced by Godwin, and then Godwin's friend ends up being the Archbishop of Canterbury, Stigand. Stigand was not like Saint Dunstan. We do not call him Saint Stigand. Stigand had a very bad relationship with the Pope. That's the person you do not want to have a bad relationship with at all. He was accused, as it says here, of pluralism. Again, really good keyword to use. Remember, plural, more than one, because he had more than one job. He was accused of simony, which meant he was selling off church posts to the highest bidder. Well, that's a great way to have good people in the job, not. And as it says there, look, deeply upset the Pope. Not a good idea at all. And then we've got problems with the priests as well, just your bog standard ordinary priests. You know, they just weren't well run. They didn't have the moral example. He is not a moral example. And he will continue being the Archbishop of Canterbury until, bizarrely, 1070. William actually keeps him on after William takes over for a little bit of continuity. But he's finally sacked. He's rubbish at his job. He is not an example of a golden age.